The first blockbuster of the 2025 MLB Trade Deadline has officially struck as a huge inter-division trade between two NL Central teams just struck as Bryant Hayes, one of the best defensive players in all of baseball, is headed from the Pittsburgh Pirates to the Cincinnati Reds. A huge trade as the Reds, as a borderline team potentially contending for a postseason spot, are going all in on a player with 5 more years of team control that they think can really extend their competitive window and push them not only for a playoff spot this year, but World Series for years to come. The Reds are currently 3 games out of a wild card spot in the National League, and they're 8.5 back of the Brewers for the NL Central, so it's definitely a wild card play. But again, I've already mentioned that they do have Bryant Hayes for 5 more years. This is a long-term play and should be an upgrade over current third baseman and former top 100 prospect Noelvi Marte, who has not necessarily been phenomenal this year. Definitely has the potential to be very good, but this immediately upgrades their third base position and their infield defense in a massive way. The Pirates have a ton of depth at the third base position in their minor leagues. They acquired Nick York at the trade deadline last year. Jared Triolo was their second round pick in 2019. Su Sheng Shea is another player who could potentially play third base, a former amateur free agent signing out of Taiwan. They have a lot of players who can play third base already on their 40-man roster, as well as a couple more who are coming up through the minor leagues. So as much as Bryant Hayes is an amazing prospect, they had the depth at that position to actually go ahead and potentially trade him away and get some really good value when, frankly, his value is probably at his highest as it will be for the next 5 years. In this video, we'll dive into the Bryant Hayes trade that just happened a little bit ago. It happened basically at 2:45 p.m. Eastern on the 30th of June. So we'll talk about Bryant Hayes, what each team is getting in terms of the Pirates prospects and what the Reds get with Hayes, and give trade grades for each team. If you could, it really mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest way to help me grow and show that you're interested in the content I make. It will get you more content, not only from me, but other great baseball creators out there, and you'll stay up to date on every single trade that happens this deadline. Without further ado, let's dive into this trade and really dig deep into every player involved and the ramifications for both teams. Bryant Hayes is a definition of a defense-first third baseman. He is insane in terms of his defensive prowess and his offensive stats, even though that's mostly what you've seen on the screen so far, lack a little bit. He is a positive WAR player, which would make sense given the fact that he has signed a huge extension with the Pirates. He is under control for 5 more years for the Reds. I already mentioned that a couple times. So take that into consideration when you think about the value that the Reds are actually getting from this deal. And again, he does have a ton of positive value. So for this year, he's not hitting very well, a 569 OPS, which is good for 59 OPS plus. So that means he's approximately 41% worse than the league average hitter, but he still put up 1.2 baseball reference WAR, which just goes to show you how valuable his defense is. He won the Gold Glove for third base in 2023 and finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting in his very first year in the major leagues in the COVID-shortened 2020 season. He definitely has a ton of potential to be a very good player going forward, though he has only had one positive offensive season in terms of OPS plus. That was that same 2023 year that he won the Golden Glove Award for the NL at third base. He is a very solid defensive third baseman, might be the best in the league, following the footsteps of the Matt Chapmans and Nolan Arenados, who have dominated the position for the past 10 or so years. Back before the 2022 season, Hayes signed a huge 8-year, $70 million contract extension with the Pirates, which means he has 5 more years of team control after 2025. 2026 to 2029 are all locked in on his contract, and 2030 is a club option for $12 million. So Hayes is going to be really cheap, and if he keeps his WAR rankings about where they are right now, he'll be providing positive value. Fangraphs has a ranking system based on the value one win above replacement provides, and if he stays at about a 2 WAR pace per year, even if it's solely defensively, that is a huge addition for the Reds, a cheap third baseman who is providing positive value in terms of the money you're giving him and the value he's giving you back, especially on that defensive side. Again, there are struggles offensively. I want to make sure I highlight that a 236, 279, 290 slash line, not a single one of those above 300 is definitely not a great look. And he was very similar the year before. Across 96 games in 2024, he hit for a 233, 283, 290 slash line. So he really does struggle offensively. He will be nothing more than a good defensive piece that hits at the bottom of the lineup most likely. He's been hitting around the 5, 6, 7 slot in a very weak Pittsburgh Pirates lineup. So barring some injuries, I don't expect him to actually hit any higher than 7th, most likely 8th or 9th in a Reds lineup that has some decent talent around him now. hitting the ball. Noelvi Marte is their current third baseman, who is more offensively focused, definitely a weak defender. So there's definitely a lot of value there in adding someone like Brian Hayes, who can shift that and be a better defensive third baseman, while you have someone like Marte, who can maybe focus on DH on the days that Austin Hayes is in the outfield. One of the players heading back in this deal is relief pitcher Taylor Rodgers, who is someone I actually think might be traded again before this deadline is over, which makes this trade a little bit tricky to kind of grade and manage because we don't know yet. He's a 34-year-old relief pitcher, currently on the last year of his contract, a $6 million deal, part of a 3-year, $33 million deal he signed with the San Francisco Giants back in 2023. So he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. Pittsburgh's not really competing right now, so it's really curious to see what exactly they're going to do. Rodgers has also been part of some really interesting trades. He was traded with Brett Rooker with the Chris Paddock and Emilio Pagan in a trade back in 2022 to the San Diego Padres. In that trade, he was actually part of the Josh Hader trade that sent Robert Gasser, Dinelson Lamet, and Esteury Ruiz to Milwaukee when Hader went over to the San Diego Padres in 2022. And was also traded just recently at the beginning of 2025 from the Giants to the Reds for minor leaguer Braxton Roxby. He hasn't been stellar this year. 0.5 WAR is a little bit lower than the rate he put up last year of 1.1 in San Francisco, but still solid enough. Fangraphs has him at a 0.2 WAR on the year. He's not doing great, a 2.45 ERA, and he's not necessarily a back end guy. He's only striking out 9.3 per nine, and he's walking 5.2, which is really high. Reds fans seem to be a little bit divided on whether he's actually been good this year and if that WAR value really reflects how good he's been. Not really, again, a back end guy, no saves, even though he did get a decent amount of saves in 21, 22. He was an all star in 2021 with the Minnesota Twins, so he definitely has some pedigree there to be a very good pitcher, but a little bit split there. And I think part of the appeal to the Pirates now is if they are going to trade a lot of their back end bullpen pieces. So if you go and look at who is currently in their bullpen that could be traded, David Bednar and Dennis Santana are really the two guys who have gotten saves this year and have been your eighth, ninth inning guys. Caleb Ferguson is also another realistic trade piece who could be potentially moved. Maybe even a Genesis Cabrera if a team really wants another lefty. You're looking at losing potentially a lot of guys out of your bullpen, and you're going to need someone to replace them. So if they can't shift Rodgers out in another deal, you're going to have someone where I could see him maybe being in a little bit more of a high leverage role should the Pirates end up trading a Bednar, a Santana, a Ferguson, or another player in their bullpen. The other player heading away in this deal is Sammy Stafura, a shortstop prospect drafted in the second round of the 2023 MLB draft out of a New York State high school, which is interesting because a lot of high schoolers in the Northeast don't end up getting drafted because it's so cold up there. Baseball is hard to come by. Generally, you have to come down to the southern states for a showcase to really make yourself seen. So being drafted that high is definitely a big accomplishment. Stafura actually became just the second high school infielder from New York State to be drafted in the first two rounds of the draft, following Sidney Culver, who was a first rounder of the New York Yankees in 2010. And if you haven't heard of him, you know how well that turned out. No offense to Sidney Culver if you're watching this video. He signed for an overslot $2.5 million, and although he did struggle in his first taste of pro ball in the Arizona Complex League in 2023, at 0.71 average, like just really not great across 12 games. He has picked it up a little bit. He moved straight to rookie ball to start 2024, did really well, only played 15 games there with an OPS over 1,000 before getting moved to single A. Did decently well, a 753 OPS across 77 games, and has stayed there in 2025. He's played 88 games there, done a little bit better, a 262, 393, 411 slash line. Good for an 804 OPS, which is definitely solid for someone who is still really young, only 20 years old, going to be 21 this offseason at single A. What the Reds really like about Stafura is his ability to bounce back and learn and be resilient. He had a similar situation in high school where as a junior he hit 273, but really focused on working on his swing and getting better at the dish, and he ended up hitting 516 as a senior. That's almost a twofold increase in his batting average in just 1 year. Really impressive stuff from a guy who was a junior and senior in high school. What's really is Stafura's calling card, though, is the fact that he's going to stick at shortstop long term. He's not going to be a elite defensive shortstop, but he has the ability to stick there, be a solid contributor there, give you a couple fielding runs across the season, and be a solid mainstay at shortstop, which is incredibly valuable. If Stafura can be resilient going forward, which he's shown in high school and with the Reds with the improvements he's made year over year, He could very easily be the shortstop of the future for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who right now, Lover Peguero is their shortstop. I don't know if that's something I would love if I was a Pirates fan. So this definitely pushes them towards a good direction with someone who could be a very good player going forward. In terms of where he best fits in terms of offensively, he's got an average hit tool. He's not likely to be at the top of the batting average leaderboards. He's got a decent eye, but he did strike out a lot in 2023. Tends to have a decently high strikeout rate, so one thing to consider. Not going to hit for a ton of power, maybe a max of 10, 12 home runs a year, 15 if he's lucky, but he is going to steal a couple bags, which will give him some value on the base pass, and for those players who play fantasy, could be an interesting add long term as the Pirates look to lock up a shortstop, and Stafura could definitely be that and provide you some valuable steals. Now that we've gone ahead and talked about all the players in this deal, let's give this trade some very quick grades. I'm going to grade the Pirates as a C plus in this deal. I really don't love the logic behind this deal. You're basically giving away a positive player in terms of the amount of money you're spending. He's on a very cheap deal. And you're also giving up someone who is an insane defensive third baseman to a division rival for the next 5 years, who you're going to have your competitive windows overlap for a little bit. The Pirates are still probably a year or two out from contending, but when they do, they have a very loaded farm system. And I think Brian Hayes could be someone at the back end of that who is going to be a solid bottom of the lineup guy, insane defense, and would provide you positive value as you make a playoff push because he's under contract for a cheap amount for 5 more seasons. It's just hard to imagine that for me. And again, they have a lot of interesting minor league talent. A lot of that is pitching, but the number one prospect in baseball right now is Connor Griffin, who is probably going to end up being a shortstop. So I don't know if I love the idea that they're getting another guy who can play shortstop. Of course, you can never have too many people playing that position. It's a rich get richer kind of situation, especially with prospects. They often don't pan out. But also, I don't know if Taylor Rodgers is moving the needle for me at all. There has to be subsequent trades of them actually trading away their bullpen pieces and maybe signing Rodgers to a cheaper deal for next year. I just don't get the move. That he either has to be traded or is only being acquired because the Reds were going to DFA him anyways, and they wanted to get some value out of him. The Pirates needed another bullpen arm if they're going to trade some of these players. I just don't think it makes a ton of sense if I'm a Pirates fan, and I'm not super stoked about the direction they're heading based on this singular trade. And we'll see what they can bring in with any other trades they do this deadline, but this does not inspire a ton of hope in me that it's going to be a great trade for the Pirates if anything does come to fruition. I'm also going to give the Cincinnati Reds the exact same grade of a C+. I really don't think this trade makes a ton of sense as well for them, which I know you might be kind of surprised. Well, Nueve Marte, bottom lineup guy anyways, and he's not hitting great. Former top 100 prospect that got in the Luis Castillo deal, potential. Well, what's not to like? He's going to be an immediate defensive upgrade and be a very good player for them. Well, I think the issue just lies in all of the players that Cincinnati has in their minor league system. They traded away a shortstop, great, that's fine. And right now their shortstop is Elly De La Cruz. You don't need another shortstop. Totally works. Matt McLean has been very good at second base. They have a very solid foundation there. But you have Spencer Steeler, you have Christian Encarnacion Strand, 2 former top 100 prospects. And when I'm looking at their minor league system as well, it is chocked full of third basemen. There are so many third basemen. Their first round pick in 2022, Sal Stewart, is currently in AAA. He is a top 10 prospect in the system. And over the past, really this entire season, honestly, he has been tearing it up in the minor leagues. So that's one question there. And when I look at other players that are potentially in rotation, I look at their other first round pick from 2022, Cam Collier, who's currently in AA and has been doing very well. Is another top 10 prospect in the organization. And then maybe Edwin Arroyo ends up at third base. Maybe Leo Balcazar ends up at third base. Well, you're going to have a guy named Brian Hayes at third base because he plays that defensively so well for the next 5 years. Where do these players go except being traded? And when you have such a wealth of talent at that position, you want to trade from that. You really want to get rid of someone from that backlog, the person you deem to be the least likely to contribute to your team, instead of dealing from a position where you probably want to have someone there who could potentially be a good shortstop. And so many shortstops like Fernando Tatis Jr., Jackson Merrill, who actually has not played shortstop at the major league level really, was a shortstop growing up all throughout the minor leagues for moving to center field, Tatis moving to right field. O'Neal Cruz, even with the Pirates, is now in the outfield. So having another shortstop would be very valuable if the Reds ever decide to do that with Elly De La Cruz, where arguably their outfield is kind of their weakest spot. I don't know. I don't think this makes a ton of sense. You're getting good value, but I think the pieces they traded away, Stafura, I'm not in love with them. I think the value is really there for what they traded away. But in terms of who they traded away, I think there were a lot better options in Sammy Stafura that would have allowed you to keep someone at a position that might be a need in the future, and shortstop is always an important position, versus the backlog of prospects you have who could play third base that really are just now completely blocked by someone for the next 5 years that you now have to trade away or DH. That just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And thank you for getting to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. There'll be 2 videos on screen, and if you made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest way to help me out and get you more baseball content as we approach the last 48 hours of the trade deadline. Thank you again for watching this video. Comment below what your thoughts on the trades are, and I hope to see you in the very next video.